back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. As always, you're here with Stef Albiero, the fantasy phenom, my guy Alex Lott. And look, we've already been in Dynasty season now for a few weeks. The playoffs are happening. Values are being impacted, and we've been talking about that in real time in our Discord channel. Shout out to everybody in there. But we're coming off one of the best weekends of football. I think it's safe to say one of the best we've ever seen as a community, whether football community, fantasy football community. Incredible week. Reminded us all why we love this game. Can't wait to see what happens as we enter the Super Bowl. But Alex, we need to get focused on these rookies today and their dynasty values, because I'm seeing values on these guys all over the place, and their names are coming up frequently in trades. Some guys are getting overvalued, some undervalued. We'll break it all down here, but you ready to get into this thing?
I am, and one thing I got to say is if you're watching this in March, if you're watching this in May, if you're watching this in June, you know which weekend of football we're talking about. It was the divisional rounds here in January. But yeah, Steph, you said it best. We got to get into these rookies, do a little bit of rookie review, because we spent all last offseason talking about these guys. The values change throughout the year as we see guys start to step up and break out. We're about to get into the 2022 rookies here soon as well. So by the time you're watching this, these may be sophomores now, talking the Najee Harrises of the world, the Jaylen Waddles, the Jamar Chase. I guess after the Super Bowl is when we can officially call them sophomores. But we're going to talk about these guys, whose value is up, whose value is down, and how we should be valuing them moving forward. Because a lot of times with rookies, you only get little snapshots, little bits and pieces of potential. So we have to see through that noise and figure out who is there to stay and who just was a flash in the pan moving forward. So
we have multiple skill position players in the top 5 at their respective positions in Dynasty leagues from that 2021 class. A lot of the names that were highly touted have delivered. But let's start with the running backs. And we'll start with the first running back off the board, 24th overall, Pittsburgh Steelers, Najee Harris. Right now sitting as our Dynasty RB2 behind Jonathan Taylor. And Keep Trade Cut, the Dynasty ADPs over there. We're going to be referencing those a lot here today. That's keeptradecut.com. Essentially, they use aggregate data from these polls. So they ask all these Dynasty football players to create rankings for Superflex leagues, Dynasty startups, and you can go position by position and see what the market is saying. And I think using this data, it's going to be a big focus for me this year to find values on players, see where the market is overvaluing, undervaluing certain players. But right now, Najee on keeptradecut.com is the Dynasty RB2. So the market agrees with you and I, Alex. And what was so impressive about Najee is he had a full 17 games. Did not get hurt. Over 307 carries, 94 targets, double-digit touchdowns on the year. How hyped are you for Najee in 2022 and even 2023, as it looks like the quarterback position is now in flux, with Big Ben actually announcing his retirement today when we're recording?
Yeah, I'm excited for Najee, and the thing I love about it is it was like a no-nonsense rookie season. Going into the year, going into rookie drafts, in 2021, he was the clear-cut number 1 running back. I know ETN was on his heels there for a while, so we'll see what happens with ETN moving forward. We've labeled him as a buy low, but what I love about Najee is you drafted him to be a workhorse. The narrative was, hey, the efficiency might not be there, the offense could be questionable, the offensive line isn't great, but the volume should allow him to have a lot of fantasy production. And as someone that had Najee in several redraft leagues, several dynasty leagues, that's exactly what you got. He never gave you that pop performance because he was a little bit restricted by that offensive line, by the quarterback play, by some other things, but he was a lock for targets. He was a lock for carries. He got a decent amount of touchdowns in that rookie season, 10 total touchdowns. And as someone who watched a lot of Steelers football only because I had Najee Harris in so many leagues, man, that was painful to watch those games, to watch that offense. It was not fun. So for me, Big Ben retiring, it leaves the door open. It cracks the door for some more potential upside in the future. Now, I don't think they can give him that kind of volume every single season if they want him playing 17 games every single season in his career. But for 2022, 2023, I expect a similar baseline. But if that efficiency goes up, if those touchdown numbers go up, the sky's the limit for a guy like Najee Harris. So he's right where we expected him to be, and he lived up to the hype in his rookie season. So if you do have Najee, if you own Najee in leagues, he's someone I'm holding on to moving forward.
The Steelers' offensive line was 28th in run blocking per Football Outsiders. It's reflected in that 3.9 yards per attempt on Najee Harris. His yards created per touch, his juke rate, those advanced tackle breaking metrics weren't anything to write home about. Granted, he was 5th in evaded tackles per game, but he was doing that on 307 carries over the course of the season. But really, those metrics don't matter. We know Mike Tomlin is committed to a workhorse back. Najee has the first-round draft capital. He was already given the monster volume, was a core part of the offense as a rookie. And when he was drafted, we talked about this. The Le'Veon Bell comps from a volume perspective are what we should expect for Harris. Multiple seasons for Lev Bell at or on pace for 300-plus carries and 100-plus targets. 94 targets in year one for Najee Harris. And that's one of the things that he brings to the table with his skill set in the passing game. It's phenomenal. We've seen him catch deep receptions up the seam, outside plays, screens, just everything you want. And the only uncertainty really is that quarterback position. To me, the Pittsburgh roster is too good to enter a full rebuild. I'm expecting either a rookie like Sam Howell or Kenny Pickett, or maybe a stable vet like a Jimmy G or Teddy Bridgewater. Mm-hmm. And even if it is Mason Rudolph, it stinks for the offense. But in that one game with Mason Rudolph, Najee, 26 carries, 4 targets in Week 10.
Yep.
He's still going to produce just because of that high volume. We've already talked about Travis Etienne on last week's episode. Go check that out on our channel. We've talked about him at length. Him, Dobbins, and Cam Akers as these buy lows throughout the season in Dynasty Leagues, especially for rebuilding teams where you need to go and get a cornerstone asset. But let's talk about Javonte Williams. Some people have him in the top 5 right now. He's the RB4 on Keep Trade Cut. That's crazy to me because you're projecting in that value no Melvin Gordon. And I think a more accurate value for Javonte is more that top 10, right? That 6 to 10 range. Think Cam Akers or Antonio Gibson after the rookie seasons where we did see those flashes. They did get the volume, and we projected things to get better the next year, and they have the youth, they have the draft capital. To me, it goes tier 1, you got JT, Najee, and Swift. Tier 2, you have the super prime studs with CMC, Joe Mixon. And then tier 3, that's the Akers, Javonte, Gibson. What are your thoughts on Javonte?
It's crazy, man. I mean, I sit here and I look at number 4 on Keep Trade Cut, and it sounds absurd. It sounds absolutely absurd, but that's, if Melgo's gone, I don't think that's out of the question. I think that is well in the range of outcomes for Javonte Williams, because you do look at the game without Melvin Gordon last season, and it was everything you would want from a running back. 23 carries, 102 yards, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 76 yards and a receiving touchdown. Absolute workhorse across the board. And even splitting carries, he was right. I mean, this backfield was just about as close to a 50-50 split as you could get all year long in terms of touches and in terms of snaps played. And Javonte Williams always looked fantastic on the field. He passed the eye test, and the stats were there for Javonte as well. Over 900 yards in his rookie season and added 300 yards through the air. So for me, Javonte in the top 5 feels really rich. I wouldn't have him that high. I think I'd have him just where you said, kind of in that tier 3. But Steph, it's really important to discuss another tier of running backs. I know this is a Javonte Williams segment, but even looking through your tiers, you had JT, Najee, and Swift in tier 1, CMC and Mixon in tier 2, Akers, Javonte, and Gibson in tier 3-4 Dynasty. And you start to think, okay, where is that older tier of running backs that was the elite group? Where is Dalvin Cook? Where's Alvin Kamara? Where's Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, even Aaron Jones? And I think that would be a very interesting tier 4, almost like a tier 3B, because those players still do have a ton of fantasy upside for the next year or 2 years. But if you are not a top contending team, I think now is the time to trade all those guys away. You could throw Derrick Henry in there as well. If you were not contending in 2022 with the top 1 or 2 team, I would be looking to capitalize on those names. But the one guy I'd throw in here, probably in my tier 3 with Akers, Javonte, and Gibson, maybe even in my tier 2 would be Saquon Barkley, because I do expect him to bounce back strong in 2022. But Javonte Williams is a top 10 dynasty back, and I think that value has skyrocketed from where he was in rookie drafts last season. And as the season went along, if you bought early, you bought at a good price. So now it's probably going to be pretty tough to acquire him. And if you want to place your bets on Melvin Gordon leaving, you're running out of time to get in on Javonte Williams.
Interesting thing about Javonte, he also played all 17 games just like Najee Harris, hovered around a 40 to 60% snap share all season. Did see it creep up over the course of the year, but kudos to Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Javonte Williams went from a 50-50 split in UNC with Michael Carter. Now he went to a 50-50 split with Melvin Gordon in Denver, and he's delivered in both situations. But with Melgo, man, he was actually more efficient through the air and on the ground than Javonte Williams. Now, he saw less volume in the receiving game, and that's one of the most important pieces. That's what should get you the most excited for Javonte Williams. 53 targets to Melvin Gordon's 38. And Melvin Gordon had 10 total touchdowns. So that's going to vacate, if he leaves, a ton of volume. We saw in that game without Melvin Gordon against Kansas City week 13, 6 for 9 through the air, 76 yards receiving, and a receiving touchdown for a 29 fantasy point outing. That was the pinnacle of our takes all offseason, where we said in redraft leagues, get Javonte Williams in that mid to late round, round 3, 4, 5, 6, and just take the upside that could present itself down the stretch, like DeAndre Swift showed us his rookie season. That was the same mindset with Javonte. Looks like we nailed that take there. But the fact that Melvin Gordon had 918 yards on the ground, 213 yards to the air, and was the RB21 in fantasy points per game in his age 28 season, very impressive. And I think he did enough to convince Denver to resign him for better or for worse.
Agreed. Yeah, I honestly, at the time of this recording, we'll see how this take pans out. I think they'll bring Melvin Gordon back on a one-year deal. But long-term, Javonte's upside still should be there. We could see him get maybe even up to 60, 65% next year. And who knows, maybe the training wheels come off after that. But Steph, let's talk about our next guy, Elijah Mitchell. My goodness, Elijah Mitchell came out of nowhere, 6th round pick. He's someone we actually covered at length last offseason. We have our hits, we have our misses, but this was one of our biggest hits from last offseason. They drafted Trey Sermon, they drafted Elijah Mitchell, and you can find it on our channel. It's a knockout battle between Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon, and we essentially said this San Francisco offense, they're going to bring these guys into camp. They're going to throw draft capital out the window. For a team that's relying on names like Jeff Wilson, JaMychal Hasty, Raheem Mostert for the past several seasons, Shanahan throws draft capital out the window and goes with the guys he trusts. So we said, look, if Elijah Mitchell comes in, earns trust, some things break his way, and that roster clears up because of injuries or other things, he could find himself on the field. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So Steph, Elijah Mitchell, by matter of circumstance, got a big opportunity in 2021. But for 2022 and forward in Dynasty Leagues, how should we be thinking about Elijah Mitchell?
Keep Trade Cut has him as the RB18 right now, behind Travis Etienne, who I believe is being undervalued at RB17. But to see Elijah Mitchell over Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, I think the value is a little inflated right now, but it's for a good reason. It's because Dynasty owners are getting smarter. They know they may have a RB1 on their hands at least for the 2022 season. And so if you have Elijah Mitchell, if you hit on a late second, early to mid third round rookie pick in Superflex leagues, you have to hold, because since everything is cleared out, just like for Travis Etienne, Elijah Mitchell has RB1 upside in 2022 if he's going to be that workhorse for the whole season. And we have Raheem Mostert, 30-year-old free agent, played 1 game last year, 8 games the year before. Jeff Wilson, injured, free agent. JaMychal Hasty, free agent, injured. Wayne Gallman, cut. Trey Sermon might be toast, as much as it pains me to say. I'm a Trey Sermon fan, but he has had a brutal start to his career. And I remember, Alex, in one of the leagues where I went 0 RB, one of our redraft leagues, Trey Sermon was one of those super late double-digit round names that I picked up. Thought, hey, this is the guy that could get the opportunity. Turns out I should have used that pick on E. Mitchell, because we knew one of those guys was going to break out from that group. And now if you carry essentially the season averages from Raheem Mostert when he was in his prime, when he was healthy, active, and on the field over the last 3 seasons, that is the volume that Elijah Mitchell is getting. And they're very similar players. Super explosive, slightly undersized. That's the guy that Shanahan wants to give the ball to. And we're already seeing that in the playoffs and across his whole resume as a pro. since day one of the 2021 season, he had 17 plus carries in 9 of 11 games. The 2 games that he missed that were both against the Arizona Cardinals, but he actually ended up producing for you in the passing game in those outings. And then the 2 playoff games, 27 carries and 2 targets in the game against Dallas, 17 carries and 4 targets against Green Bay. That is great volume. And, a season average as far as his passing game works is not anything to write home about. But 2 targets per game, that's the Cam Akers volume. And he's a top 8 dynasty running back in most circles right now.
Yeah, Steph, I'm with you. I think Elijah Mitchell is a strong hold right now. There's a lot of murkiness to the situation, if you will. You mentioned all of the running backs that are going to be clearing the way in 2022 and beyond for Elijah Mitchell. But you got to think about the situation moving forward. And I think he has earned the trust of Shanahan. I do think he's earned the trust of this coaching staff, and he played great. He passes the eye test as well. The efficiency is there. The explosiveness is there. So I don't see a reason for them to turn away from him as this workhorse back. The only concern moving forward would be Deebo Samuel coming in and getting some carries in the backfield. Would be if Trey Lance takes over at quarterback. What does that do to the rushing game? Do touchdowns, do carries, do short yardage situations all of a sudden start to go to Trey Lance? Does it take away from that running back room as a whole in terms of their rushing production now that you have a receiver and a quarterback taking carries, taking yards, taking touchdowns? So that's the flip side. I don't think that's a strong enough argument to turn away and sell Elijah Mitchell. But if you have people in your leagues that got lucky and fell into Elijah Mitchell and have him on their team and they're thinking, oh, he had the pop rookie season. They don't know about the situation. They're like, oh, Mostert could be back and Hasty is there and Jeff Wilson is there and Trey Lance is taking over and Deebo is there. Take advantage of that, throw out a trade offer, and see if you can pick up Elijah Mitchell. I'd be very comfortable trading early seconds for Elijah Mitchell. Even late first this year, I would trade for Elijah Mitchell. I would take that gamble for sure. So if you can make a move and get him, I think he's a hold or a buy low, and only buy low if someone in your league is undervaluing him because of some uncertainty this offseason and change with the 49ers.
Just like James Robinson, who was an undrafted free agent, there is that risk holding on to E. Mitchell long-term that he is this 6th-round pick, doesn't have a huge cap hit against the team. And then on top of that, he's undersized, and he's already shown a little bit of injury concern as a rookie. And we've had, it seems like, whoever the running back is for the 49ers is going to get hurt. It's almost just a motif. It's a meme at this point, how often it happens. I think we can expect more of that from Elijah Mitchell next season, but he's also going to be a guy that we have to love in best ball because when he's healthy, he's going to produce. If the offense is more electric with Trey Lance, there could be more scoring opportunity. The boxes could clear up a little bit. They could be running a lot of RPOs. The production was solid from Elijah Mitchell this year. Averaged 88 rushing yards a game, scored a touchdown in 6 of those 11 starts, 14th on the year in fantasy points per game as a 23-year-old rookie. And we know San Francisco is a high-volume run team, so it is a great situation. He's running efficient, putting up fantasy points somehow, some way, almost every single week. The upside comes into play with all that passing work. If he truly is the workhorse in San Francisco, he's going to go nuclear in 2022. But I'm monitoring his value throughout the season. He's one of those guys, like, he's a hold, but you're looking for that first opportunity where you can sell high. Because who knows what happens in 2023 if Trey Sermon's toast, Elijah Mitchell's really the only guy. Maybe they bring in a veteran for some depth, try to compete, a Wayne Gallman type name next year. We could see E. Mitchell enter more of that rotation that we're used to for San Francisco. So that's why I'm looking for that ability to sell high if he is that workhorse. And otherwise, I'll just hold and be happy with the value that I got on him in my rookie draft. But let's talk about another late round running back, a 4th rounder. Currently the Dynasty RB20 per keep trade cut, not far off from Elijah Mitchell at 18. It's Michael Carter. And I got to say, I'm in at this value because the Jets are stuck with the decisions that they've made. They dug their own grave and now they have to lay in it. They're bringing back the same coaching staff. Zach Wilson's still there. Michael Carter's still there. On an offense that should continue to be in pass-heavy game scripts. And one thing I want to throw out, if you go back and look at the draft process leading up to April 2021, we liked Michael Carter more than Elijah Mitchell as a prospect. He has better production as as far as what he did in college against better competition, torching the ACC with Javonte Williams at his side. He's a year younger than Elijah Mitchell at 22 years old and saw way more targets as a rookie. 4 targets a game, a decent 10 carries a game. The efficiency in the bad offense capped his ceiling, but 65 yards from scrimmage a game in 14 games as a rookie, high floor in PPR leagues, I'll take it. I'll take it. That passing game usage is alluring. If DeAndre Swift can do it and be an RB1 in Detroit, I think Michael Carter can be a fine RB2 in fantasy over the next couple of years.
He has that floor potential, but RB20 for me is still a little bit rich for Michael Carter. I get it. He flashed as a rookie, but he really didn't have much competition. He was dealing with Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman, LaMichael Pirine. So by matter of circumstance, he was out on the field a ton, and those guys battled some injuries as well. But I think about this Jets team, and I think moving forward, if they don't really address the running back position at all, kind of like they did in last year, except for Carter, then yeah, he's going to walk into another big role. But the second they bring in someone else there, I think his value really deflates. And there is a lot of tests for him this offseason, and he has to survive a lot of different transactions to get through to training camp as the clear number 1 back. I almost think of this as like a Myles Gaskin situation from last season. Obviously, Gaskin had his ups and downs this season, and by the end, it was clear he wasn't going to pan out. But if you remember 2021 offseason, you had Myles Gaskin in Miami, and everyone said, hey, they're going to draft some, or they're going to sign somebody in free agency to come in. If they don't, then they're definitely going to draft a running back in the draft to complement or take over for Myles Gaskin on those early downs. And I think of it in a similar way for Michael Carter. I think the expectation is they'll sign a free agent. If they don't, they could draft another running back as well. And you look at the veteran running back class this year, and it's pretty strong. Now, a lot of these guys will end up going back to their team, but I'm just going to read off some of these names. You got unrestricted free agents, Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, even a Phillip Lindsay, Raheem Mostert, Rashad Penny, Sony Michel, Marlon Mack, Ronald Jones, James Conner, Darrell Williams, Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman. So there are a lot of names on this list. There's even more guys I'm not even mentioning. I don't have time to read all of them. But there's a lot of guys in that veteran category that they could bring in that wouldn't totally tank Michael Carter's value, but it would really cap his upside. So I think RB20 is decent right now. I'd probably have him closer to RB25 personally, just right outside of that RB2 range. And especially once we get some of these new rookie backs in, the rookies from this season, the Kenneth Walkers of the world, the Isaiah Spillers, the Breece Halls, I think that's going to bump him back a little bit further. So I don't hate it, but if I have Michael Carter and I can sell, I would. And for example, I would much rather have Elijah Mitchell than Michael Carter. And it speaks volumes that they're only 2 spots away in the keep trade cut ranking. So if people are valuing them the same, might be a good opportunity if you have Carter, maybe try to trade him for Elijah Mitchell straight up and get yourself a little win.
I'm curious, who do you think has the safer role? You do think it is Elijah Mitchell because of the volume that he's continuously put up in San Francisco?
I do. I think because of the volume and just because of the performance. I mean, he was fantastic this year, and I get it. Michael Carter showed flashes as well. But Elijah Mitchell, now we're in playoff games for San Francisco, and Elijah Mitchell's the workhorse running back. This is a 6th-round rookie pick getting a workhorse role in big playoff games. So I think Elijah Mitchell's role is fairly safe moving forward. And I would be a lot more concerned for Michael Carter if they brought in another back than I would be for Elijah Mitchell.
Both of these teams run the same Shanahan-LaFleur type scheme. So it's an interesting comparison. It's one we're going to have to keep an eye on. But the efficiency has certainly been better for E. Mitchell. And with Carter, it seemed like they were even hesitant to make him the guy, even after some injuries. Right? They were sprinkling in other guys to take over that volume, whereas with E. Mitchell, it was day 1, 2021, we're relying on you to not only be in the rotation, but take 15-plus carries once that backfield kind of cleared out. I want to mention a couple other guys. We can just rapid fire these deeper running backs from the 2021 class, but a quick value check-in on a few of these names. Ramondre Stevenson, keep trade cut RB32. It's a guy that I've actually been sending late seconds, early 3rd round, picks for in Superflex leagues, just trying to buy him as a guy that, if you look at his projection going into next year, it's probably going to be pretty brutal, but projections don't hold up. Projections do not last the entire season. And so when you have Ramondre Stevenson showing us that he's relied on by the Patriots to get passing work in an offense that's incrementally improving as Mac Jones gets more comfortable, he should be better next year, and that's what we all project. Ramondre Stevenson, did actually pass the eye test. You and I said that he looked slow coming out of college. I still prefer Damian Harris in a vacuum if we're just talking about talent, but Ramondre Stevenson is getting more volume than Damian Harris through the air, even when Harris is healthy. So that's the exciting part for Stevenson. We saw when Harris did go down, Stevenson took over and was an absolute monster. So he's a guy that I like to just tack on at the end of my deals, send out some late round picks for him. There's not really that many good running backs in this class. There's a clear top 4, I'd say, maybe a top 5 as we go through the combine and the Senior Bowl process. We see some guys get some hype, maybe some draft capital impacts things, but you're not going to get a late second round running back this year. There is no Michael Carter in this class, and it's just a lot less deep. So if you need a running back on that roster, throw Ramondre Stevenson into a deal. Alex, you with me on that value?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And Stevenson was a guy. We can own up to it, Steph. In the pre-draft process, we missed on Stevenson. We didn't give him enough credit, and he flashed during the preseason and the regular season, and he absolutely exceeded expectations. So you said it best. These are guys, we'll hit on a couple more, to where they increased their draft stock from where they were picked last year. So you got to think about if we were redrafting 2021, Stevenson would probably be a mid-second round pick. So I'll throw out a late second in 2022, a mid to late second round pick. So I'll throw out a late second in 2022 because, to your point, that running back class is a lot more shallow this season. And it's just also really interesting to think about these guys. Like Stevenson last year was probably a late third and early fourth. Chuba Hubbard is another one on our list, was a third rounder last year. RB 38 on keep trade cut. And another guy that had some value in his rookie season. I'd say if we were redrafting, probably moved up from an early third. Maybe if we were redrafting would be a late second type of guy. This season, you just have to think about where would you slot him in. If you were drafting in 2022, and with all the rookies, you also had the option to choose Ramondre or to choose Chuba, where would you slot them in? And for me, for both guys, I think it is in that late second round territory, especially with some of the rumors around the Panthers with Christian McCaffrey. We don't really know which direction this team is going. And Chuba, when he got opportunity, was good, not great. He had some good games, some bad games, but he had opportunity and he was okay. So I don't think Chuba really has what it takes to be a workhorse in the NFL, but definitely someone where if you can get him on the cheap, might be worth picking up as a handcuff.
I moved him in a deal. Essentially, I moved Chase Edmonds for Chuba Hubbard. In a stable where I had a lot of running backs on their prime already. I wanted to add some youth to my running back core. Now, there were other names in that deal. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was acquiring Stephon Diggs, but that's a older name that you can try to flip into a Chuba Hubbard. Same thing with these next two guys, Khalil Herbert and Kenny Gainwell, right next to each other. Khalil Herbert, RB40, Kenny Gainwell, RB41. Really, for both these guys, they showed flashes when they got the opportunity. The situation in and of itself stinks, but they do have handcuff appeal, and that's really all we want. It makes no sense to hold on to a Zach Moss. Right, that was a guy that we had coming into the season. It's like, hey, he might have some standalone value. He'll compete in that backfield 50-50 split. He can get some of the touchdown work.
He's done. Okay, Zach Moss is done. But I see these guys in similar situations where, and now I think both are showing us a lot more from their on-the-field production, the numbers that they're putting up, the way they're being utilized. We saw Khalil Herbert really just be a workhorse for multiple weeks in a row, but he's on the Bears, and there's so many questions about what that offense is going to look like. And then Kenny Gainwell was in this weird 5-way running back split in Philly, but seemed to be the red zone back, but then was also getting passing work. And then when Sanders went down, he wasn't the guy. So just a weird situation. Hopefully things clear up. I still think Gainwell is a guy that I want to buy in all formats. I just see what he did in college as a pass-catching back plus. There's a path for him to be a team's RB1 or a 1A, so to speak. Alex, one more name I want to throw out there. I'm curious if this is a guy that's crossed your radar at all. Chris Evans, handcuff of Joe Mixon on the Cincinnati Bengals. He's the RB59 and keep trade cut right now. If you're in a startup, you're looking at deep running back names. Is he one that you're considering? No.
You think Samaje Perine is the guy?
I don't think Samaje Perine's the guy. You never know. I mean, Chris Evans could flash, but I could probably give you, I guess at running back 59. You're talking so deep at this point. It's all just flyers. Like the path for Chris Evans to have long-term value is such an uphill battle that I'm not calling it impossible by any means, but I'm just not interested. Just not interested at this point.
Wow, I'm floored.
What about you? You want Chris Evans?
I liked what he showed in the receiving game. 17
Yeah.
targets, caught 15 of them for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns to the air. I think he's past Samaje Perine, and I don't think Perine's getting resigned. So Chris Evans is flashing. He's also on the field every game on special teams. They like what they have in Chris Evans there. He's a guy I'm keeping an eye on as a deep stash. I'll take him over Kene and Nwangwu behind Dalvin Cook. It's just a deep name, RB59. Want to throw it out there. Now let's go back up to the top of the list in the wide receiver spot. The clear headliner, everybody knows, Ja'Marr Chase, the consensus. Like, I pretty much every rankings that's out there at this point, every outlet from Fantasy Pros to Keep Trade Cut, Player Profiler, Ja'Marr Chase is the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. He's over Justin Jefferson, I believe, because of the perceived security and rapport with Joe Burrow. They let Joe Burrow throw the ball 1 billion times per game. Both Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow are young. There's no looming free agency concerns like with Justin Jefferson and the Kirk Cousins situation. So it makes sense that he would be the Dynasty wide receiver 1. I'm curious to see how his target share evolves because he really didn't do that much from a target volume perspective. He was just hyper efficient and getting juicy receptions deep downfield, in the end zone, in the red zone, and creating yards after the catch. And they're using Ja'Marr Chase all over the field. Jet sweeps, bubble screens, deep downfield. He's everything you want in a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to spend too much time on Chase. It's obvious. If you have him, congratulations. And if not, good luck acquiring him. 128 targets as a rookie. Pretty good in terms of target volume, but to your point, not great. A lot of these alpha wide receivers, your Stephon Diggs, your Devonta Adams, your DeAndre Hopkins in his prime, we're talking 150 plus targets. Chase at 128 in 17 games. So there's some room for that to grow, which is encouraging. And he was hyper efficient making those big plays. And the more I watch Ja'Marr Chase, it's not a fluke. Like the first time I'm like, dang, like he was in between 4 defenders and through his agility, through his speed, somehow found a way out of it. But when he does it 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, you're like, this dude just gets it. This dude just has such an on-field instinct that's uncoachable. And he pairs that with his physical ability, and it's just absolutely incredible. So I'm all in on Ja'Marr Chase at the wide receiver 1. It's crazy to think he was going as a mid to late first last year in a lot of places. Steph, a Dynasty League, you and I are both in. Ja'Marr Chase went as the 108 in Superflex,
Golly.
now the Dynasty wide receiver 1.
It's
Really
like
makes
Kyle
you
Pitts
kick yourself.
type, dude.
If I could have traded up and gotten him. There was a lot of thirsty quarterback teams in our league as well, so that did suppress his value a little bit. But man, Ja'Marr Chase, what a pick. And back-to-back seasons. If you are in a long-running Dynasty League and you were able to go Justin Jefferson in 2020, Ja'Marr Chase in 2021, congratulations. But Steph, let's get into a name that's a little bit more debatable. It's Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle, someone that was polarizing for you and I last season in our own right on the show. I know you really rose on him in redraft. I was more in on him in Dynasty, and it felt like by redraft season, you were more in on him from a redraft perspective. Wide receiver 7 on Keep Trade Cut feels really, really rich. What do you think about Jaylen Waddle moving forward? As a rookie, I mean, set all sorts of records for the Dolphins and really showed to be their alpha wide receiver 1. Wasn't a little bit of a target funnel situation in terms of his volume with Devontae Parker missing time, with Will Fuller out, but he sure showed a lot on the field, and he showed he can be a playmaker in the NFL.
All right, guys, real quick, we got to interrupt the show to tell you about this free giveaway we're doing with our guys at Ultra Game. You can see we're rocking the gear right now. I'm rocking the Carolina Panthers, Alex with his Indianapolis Colts. And this is some of the most comfortable, affordable gear that you're going to be able to find, all sold through Amazon. Alex, tell them about the giveaway.
Yeah, Steph, we are running a giveaway for a free Ultra Game long sleeve t-shirt for your favorite team. All you have to do to enter is make sure you are subscribed to Double Move Sports, subscribe to Ultra Game's channel. We will link that in the description below. Like the video and just comment your favorite team. Hopefully a lot of you are rocking my Indianapolis Colts as your favorite team, but multiple comments can get multiple entries if you do like more than one team. So be sure to blow it up and win that free Ultra Game long sleeve shirt.
Wide receiver 7 on Keep Trade Cut is inflated. And I think part of that is because there's a lot of these top-end wide receivers that have quarterback questions. So I think it's part of just the nature of the season that we're in right now, where there's the trade rumors with Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf is a premier receiver up there. Deebo Samuel, how's he going to be with Trey Lance entering the picture? We don't know what's happening with Devontae Adams in free agency, Chris Godwin in free agency. Deontay Johnson's going to have a new quarterback. So I think once things clear out, a lot of those names are going to pass Jaylen Waddle on keep, trade, cut. But if you can sell him at that value, I think you absolutely have to. I have him as a mid to high end wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. If you can get a Stephon Diggs plus, a Chris Godwin plus, a Terry McLaurin plus for Jaylen Waddle, 100% do that deal. I just don't see you getting that. Just based on the leagues that I'm in, the type of values that I'm hearing his owners have, you're not going to get him at wide receiver 7 value. But in a lot of ways, Jaylen Waddle is a sell high for the same reasons that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a sell high. But there's a few caveats here, okay? And like I said, I'm still mid to high-end wide receiver 2 on Waddle in Dynasty. But the situation this year inflated his volume. There's no debate about that. We had Devontae Parker missing 7 games of injury. He's 29 years old. Hasn't looked good since that Fitzmagic season where he's the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Will Fuller played, a game and a half, missed the rest of the year. The Dolphins come into next season with the second most cap space. They have a pick in every round. They're going to have a new coaching staff. Even with target competition, though, I think Waddle has to be valued in the top 15 because we saw him do it consistently over a full season. Where with Amon-Ra St. Brown, we just saw that 6-game spike after all these other things had to happen, after Swift went down, after Hawkinson went down, after Quintez Cephas and Khalif and Raymond didn't hit. And we saw the season-long stat lines blow up to historic proportions. We had Waddle breaking Anquan Bolden's rookie reception record, 104 catches on 142 targets in year 1 for Jaylen Waddle. Absolutely ridiculous. I think the targets are earned, and receivers have to get open, and Waddle showed that he could do that consistently. Over 1,000 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, a very impressive. And Alex, if you remember, right, and back to what we were talking about, the redraft versus Dynasty, I was out on Waddle in rookie drafts at his ADP because I just thought he was such a black box prospect with how little we saw him on the field in Alabama. But one thing that blew my mind and got me really excited in Dynasty is that 73% catch rate, top 10 in the league. And he finished 15th in fantasy points per game. He has the first-round draft capital. We know he has the explosive athleticism. And it feels like we haven't even seen the full skill set of Waddle. He had to get relegated to this Deebo Samuel from 2020 type of role where he was just a near the line of scrimmage type guy, just hit him with those bubble screens, those slants, and see what he can do after the catch. He was top 10 in yards after the catch this year. So I think there's a path to a greater ceiling. Yes, the volume could go down, but he gains a better offensive scheme for downfield playmaking. That could be huge. A better offensive line than the trash that Miami had this year would be huge. Maybe he gets a quarterback upgrade. So while I'm selling at wide receiver 7, I'm holding in most leagues. He's worth a top 3 2022 rookie pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the only way I'm selling on Jaylen Waddle right now, I do have him in a couple spots. I would sell him if those names you mentioned that he's in front of, the DK, Deebo, Adams, Godwin, Deontay Johnson. If I could get like Deontay Johnson plus a 2022 first, I'm selling Jaylen Waddle, right? But I'd probably hold in most cases.
I'd do Deontay in a second for him.
Yeah, I'd think about that if it was an early second. But yeah, like Jaylen Waddle, man, the name that I have to bring up, and it seems so easy at first. Like as we're talking through Jaylen Waddle, just now I thought about this. I'm thinking CeeDee Lamb or Jaylen Waddle. And I started looking into it, CeeDee Lamb or Jaylen Waddle. And the obvious answer for me, without looking at anything, is CeeDee Lamb. You think about Dallas, you think about what he showed, the hype he had going into this season, Dak Prescott as his quarterback. On keep, trade, cut, they're back to back right now. They're neck and neck. Jaylen Waddle, as of right now, is actually one spot ahead of CeeDee Lamb. They're so close in value, they're almost tied at number 6 and number 7. And I just feel like that's absurd. They're the same age. CeeDee Lamb's actually a little bit younger. But I look at CeeDee Lamb's rookie season, and I look at Jaylen Waddle's rookie season, and Jaylen Waddle's was far better in every single category. And then I look at Jaylen Waddle's rookie season versus CeeDee Lamb's sophomore season, and Jaylen Waddle was still better in every category except yards. He had a few less yards. But I think about Jaylen Waddle, he is the clear number one. There's nowhere to go but up at the quarterback position next season. So I don't think it's that crazy to think of him in a similar tier as CeeDee Lamb. So Waddle's tough, and I still would prefer CD. Like, if someone offered me CeeDee Lamb for Jaylen Waddle, I would take it. I would rather have Lamb, but I don't think he's far off.
And you got to remember, Miami made a lot of pick transactions. They have San Francisco's first-round pick and third-round pick, and they traded their own to the Giants. So, this was a team that probably could have, done the whole let's tank, get an early pick, whatever. They didn't have that luxury because the 49ers are now one of the final four teams left playing in the postseason. So they're going to have a late pick in that first round. There's a lot of good wide receivers that are probably going to be there, but I got to imagine they're going to address that offensive line. We'll see how things pan out as we get closer to the draft season. Keep rocking with us. But let's talk about Jaylen Waddle's college teammate, Devonta Smith. Right now is a wide receiver 17, mid-range RB2. I love him as a weekly flex option in super flex leagues. Love him in best ball because he is so boom bust. You never know when those good weeks are. I relate his value very similarly to Hollywood Brown over the last couple of years, where we know the talent is there. We know he can get open, make plays. Now, I like Devonta Smith's skill set a lot better than Hollywood Brown, but as far as their fantasy production, it's going to be boom bust, but that ceiling is just so appealing. That's why he's a guy that I'm fine keeping on my roster, not really looking to necessarily buy or sell at the moment, unless there's somebody in my league who just doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, man, Devonta Smith is tough, and I think it is obvious Waddle is ahead of Devonta Smith now. It was flip-flopped back last season for most people. But Smith is tough. I think you're right. I think that flex option is always going to be as long as Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. He is similar to Hollywood Brown in the sense that he has a running quarterback as well. And you could have a week where they're trailing in a game and Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson for Hollywood has to throw the ball more than they're comfortable with, and they have a ton of passing volume. We've seen that happen. But then there's also the games where it's a competitive game where they get out to a lead and they run the football. The quarterback runs the football. They scramble, and instead of, if you think about in Aaron Rodgers and he gets outside the pocket, running, he does run a little bit, but it's usually like, hey, I'm keeping my eyes downfield, and I want to see if I can get Devontae Adams on a broken play. That creates so many more opportunities for him, where with a Hollywood, with a Devonta Smith, those opportunities are gone. If it's a designed pass play and the quarterback scrambles, like, he's probably going to take off downfield. So that eliminates some of that, that opportunity for Smith. So as long as Hurts is the quarterback, I just wonder about the volume. You see it with these running quarterbacks. But I agree with you. I think the talent is there. We don't know what's going to happen in Philly this offseason. There's always rumors about the quarterback spot. I think Hurts is good enough to support a valuable fantasy football wide receiver. So I'm with you. I think Devonta Smith as that mid-range wide receiver too is fair. And I'm probably not buying him. Those are the kind of receivers I typically like to stay away from in Dynasty League because I don't see them as league winners, especially with someone like Devonta Smith. He's young. Whoever the owner is probably still valuing him incredibly high because of the talent, because of the youth. So if I'm in that case, I would rather go buy low on a Tyler Lockett, someone who's 28, 29 years old, who I can get for half the price as Devonta Smith right now.
100%. Now, I do feel like some of the size concerns were actually addressed by Devonta Smith this year. I think he shut a lot of people up who thought, he's going to be hurt. He's never going to be able to produce. Or, hey, he's going to be a gadget guy. He's not going to be able to get open on the outside. He's showing us that he actually can do that. The target share was fine, 22%. Had 103 targets, 6.1 targets per game as a rookie. I mean, the metrics are not bad. They're just not game-breaking. And with the way that production is spread out, he's not a high-floor receiver. As much as we wanted to shoehorn him into that role, he's just not. But definitely a guy that is worth that ADP at wide receiver 17. If you look a little bit lower down the list, a receiver with first-round draft capital, dealt with some injury, was slowly onboarded as the year went on. Kind of some of the same issues as Devonta Smith as far as his ceiling and his situation. Rashod Bateman, wide receiver 24, right now right behind Ayuk and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like him a lot more in a rebuild as a flex name. Maybe a wide receiver 2 if I'm loaded at all the other positions, or Ideally, just as my wide receiver 4. Just a guy that I can rotate into that flex. And just like Devonta Smith, just like with Hollywood Brown, hope that he has the big game. But I'm hoping long-term, as he develops, as we saw the Ravens, they dealt with injury and all these brutal game scripts. We saw the pass volume go up for Lamar Jackson this year, and he delivered. He retained a lot of his efficiency. It wasn't like, we have to ask Lamar Jackson to throw a ton, and he's throwing these inaccurate balls. He's airmailing guys consistently. No, he was still throwing plenty of touchdowns. The completion rate was still high. So Rashod Bateman's a guy that I have confidence in. Hopefully they can just move Hollywood Brown to the outside to play that deep threat role and have Rashod Bateman play that role of a Stephon Diggs. Because that was the guy that we were comping him to all throughout the draft process.
Definitely a rebuild name. I think it could take a while for Bateman. I think he could end up with a career trajectory similar to a Devontae Parker, a first-round draft pick by matter of some injuries, by a matter of circumstance, by some other things. It's a late breakout, and I don't think Bateman necessarily is going to take 4.5 years to break out like Parker did, but it could be a slow burn for Bateman, and we did start to see him really take over in some games last season, which was really, really encouraging, and you and I certainly do believe in the skill set. Stephon Diggs is that guy that we have compared him to many, many times. So I'm with you on Bateman. If you're rebuilding, you might be able to get him for a late second, a mid to late second, which I think would be an absolute steal. So, yeah, if I'm contending, he's not necessarily someone I'm trying to acquire. But if I drafted him last season or if someone's disappointed, people are getting more and more impatient in these leagues because we're getting – the Joe Burrows, the Justin Herberts are ruining it for us at the quarterback spot. Then the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons are ruining it at the wide receiver spot. The league is not built for these rookies to come in and play like this. And now we're getting these outliers. We're getting these just tremendous talents that are picking the game up so quickly that when guys don't hit right off the bat and they're not studs, people tend to give up. But Rashod Bateman's definitely someone I think could come around long term. So he's someone I would be willing to buy.
Definitely a guy that you can buy low on in home leagues. People who know what they're doing aren't going to be giving up Shoddy B in a lot of circumstances. But
Shoddy B.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 22 right now. We've already talked about him as a sell. A guy who's actually higher than him at the rankings, right behind Devonta Smith per Keep Trade Cut. Wide receiver 17, Elijah Moore.
It's wild.
Elijah Moore. And I was talking about how the game scripts are so favorable for Marco Carter. They're even more favorable for Elijah Moore. Jamison Crowder is definitely going to be gone from that Jets roster. They just need to continue to rebuild. And even though Zach Wilson will cap the ceiling, there's at least enough of a sample size to say that Elijah Moore can get the ball from Zach Wilson. He can complete passes, and we saw Corey Davis have the big games. Elijah Moore is a guy that we said before he even was drafted that he can play all over the field. He can be that explosive slot receiver that plays that Jamison Crowder role. He could also be a guy who plays on the outside. Our comp to him was Antonio Brown. As far as his skill set, not saying he's going to be Antonio Brown, but that's a guy that you can put anywhere. And the New York Jets saw that as well. 16.7% slot snaps. The rest of them were on the outside. So while there was some injuries, there was some COVID stuff, there was just days where the offense broke down completely. Elijah Moore is a guy that saw nothing but his stock improve as the year went on.
Agreed. He's a guy we loved, and he had a bye window early in the season. Through those first 5 games into the bye week, even through week 6, he had done nothing. I mean, he was getting like 1 reception for -3 yards, had a couple games where he didn't have any reception, so he was really struggling in this offense. And then all of a sudden things clicked for Elijah Moore, and he had a tremendous stretch during the season. I mean, listen to this stretch of back-to-back games. 7 for 84 and 2, then he went 3 for 44 and 1, then he went 8 for 141 and 1, had a game 4 for 46, but then backed that up with 6 for 77 and 1. Then he was ultimately shut down for the season. So we saw the sneak peek. We saw the window for Elijah Moore. We saw that he can be that target hog in this Jets offense, and that's with Mike White. That's with Zach Wilson. That's with these struggling quarterbacks. So if Zach Wilson takes any steps forward, if that pass volume increases at all, Zach Wilson didn't do a ton last season. I mean, he went over 300 yards 0 times as a rookie. So I expect that to be higher than 0 in 2022. And for Elijah Moore, because he did get shut down for the end of the season, people are just so quick to forget. He's someone I'd be willing to buy. And the fact that he's up there with the Devonta Smiths, the Rashod Batemans of the world speaks to how people are feeling about Elijah Moore. But if you are in a home league and he got shut down, and people are fading Elijah Moore, he's someone I'm definitely willing to grab because we loved him going into last season, and I love him just as much now heading into 2022.
He's a buy for me. He's a firm buy. I'm trying to acquire him everywhere I can because once the genie's out of the bottle, it's not going back.
The upside is there too. Yep.
He can be the wide receiver one for this team. Like Corey Davis, he's on his way out, right? And that even though he had that first round draft capital, we've seen him struggle pretty much throughout his entire career. Like he had that one good season going into free agency in Tennessee that got him the Jets contract, but he's 27 years old at this point and hasn't really been consistent. So Elijah Mitchell could break out all over the place, be that stud wide receiver one for this offense, and we saw a sneak peek of it. But whereas Amon-Ra St. Brown is not this stud athlete that had put up video game numbers all throughout college, Elijah Moore is. And Elijah Moore still has the early second-round draft capital, and he's 21 years old right now. So he's the guy that I'm investing in heavily, sending out offers in pretty much every league, every format. Two more names to touch on before we talk about some deep sleepers. Kadarius Toney and Rondale Moore. They're back-to-back right now at wide receiver 34 and wide receiver 35 on Keep Trade Cut. And these could not be any more different players. Rondale Moore is this small, explosive playmaker that they're using him as unfortunately, like that Deebo Samuel, Jaylen Waddle role, but there's way, way more target competition. So it's like, how much is Rondale Moore really going to do when he's only getting screens, he's only getting jet sweeps, and he's only getting used on special teams? So I have some concerns on Rondale Moore. His value has dropped significantly since draft day. What are your thoughts on Rondale, and would you take Toney over him at this point? Because I think I would.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would take Toney over Rondale, and I have the same concerns. We saw the flashes from Rondale Moore if the opportunity is there, but we just didn't see enough of it. So the hope for Rondale as we get into the offseason, it's kind of similar for Kadarius Toney as well. These are two hyper-talented players, both guys that can be these Swiss Army knives, be used in very interesting ways, jet sweep, screens. They can get it done down the field as well. They have speed. We saw it from both guys, but for Rondale Moore and Kadarius Toney, there's a lot of noise this offseason with the personnel of the roster. And I get it. Talent earns targets. You know, vacated targets are one thing, but if you're good enough, you'll earn those targets. We saw Toney do that a little bit, actually earn his way to targets in 2021. Didn't see it as much from Rondale Moore with the depth chart that they have. But for the Giants, what does Kenny Golladay have left? Is Sterling Shepard going to be back? You know, is Darius Slayton going to be back? There's a lot of questions for the Giants. Evan Ingram is an unrestricted free agent. So what is that depth chart going to shake out to? And honestly, in that situation, of all the guys I just named, Kadarius Toney is the best player. So Kadarius Toney has the opportunity in New York to earn the number one role based on his talent, where I don't know that the same can be said for Rondale Moore. Christian Kirk is an unrestricted free agent. A.J. Green's getting older. DeAndre Hopkins will be back from his injury. So at best, in Arizona, Rondale Moore is going to step into the number 2 role. But that's with Kyler Murray as his quarterback and more pass volume. So two very uniquely different situations. But for me, it all comes down to the ability to be an alpha wide receiver one. That's what I want. I want explosive plays, which both guys can make. So even though the situation is pretty questionable, I want Toney over Rondale Moore because I think he has a more clear role to being a guy who can get 130, 140, who knows, maybe even 150 targets if all things break the right way.
At this point, I almost wish Rondale Moore went to the Jets so that way he could be used like Elijah Moore, where he gets moved all around the formation, plays in the slot, plays on the outside. Rondale Moore playing 63.8% of his snaps in the slot. They're really relegating him to this explosive slot receiver, which is fine. But to your point, there's a lot more working against him, and his efficiency numbers were not great. For Rondale Moore to really produce for us in fantasy, he's going to have to be like destroying defense, evading a billion tackles, breaking off big plays multiple times per game because the ADOT just isn't there. The air yards are not there. His average target distance was 3.3 yards, 114th across all wide receivers. Air yard share was below 6%, 114th amongst all wide receivers. Air yards is outside the top 100 as well. So for a guy that's getting 15 air yards per game, and I know it's a limited sample size, but that's the way that they're using Rondale Moore. And as much as we like the talent, well, something I'm going to be focusing on a lot more this season, Alex, is going to be not only the skill set, but the skill set within the offense. And I know situations can change quickly, but for a lot of these guys, their measurables and their college production doesn't always tell the whole story as far as how they're going to get used. And while it does feel kind of weird to pigeonhole guys into, okay, this is the line of scrimmage guy, this is the deep threat, this is the alpha wide receiver one, this is a slot reception guy. That's the way that we need to be thinking about these guys within their offenses if we want to have projections that project forward and give us that highest upside. And that's exactly what you're doing here with the Kadarius Toney thing, because we did see that flash as the outside playmaker, commanding 13 targets in a game, caught 10 of those for 189 yards. Eventually came back against Tampa Bay week 11, another 12-target game. And he's not playing in the slot. So it's a guy you have to get excited about. I like Toney a lot more than Rondale Moore, unfortunately at this point, but still hopeful for Rondale just with the talent that he has. I'm going to throw out a few more names. Josh Palmer, wide receiver 49. Nico Collins, wide receiver 56. Amir Smith-Marset, a guy that I'm very excited about long-term in Minnesota. Guy that you can pick up off a lot of waiver wires right now. But are you tacking these guys onto deals, and is there one clear name that stands out?
I love Josh Palmer, man. I do. I liked him coming in. He got the draft capital in the 3rd round last season, a little bit of a shock on draft day. But Josh Palmer, you look at what he was able to do as a rookie, it was nothing crazy. I mean, he finished the season with 33 receptions, 353 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But it was all concentrated in a couple games where he had an expanded role due to some other injuries around him. He had a game with 5 for 66 and a touchdown, had a game with 5 for 43 and a touchdown. Made a lot of good plays for this Chargers team, showed enough for me in his rookie season to be excited about him moving forward. And I look at the situation as well. It's one to monitor because in LA, you've got Justin Herbert, great situation, great quarterback, great passing offense. You've got Mike Williams, who's an unrestricted free agent. He could be gone. And if Mike Williams leaves and Josh Palmer steps into that number 2 receiver role, he's going to be valuable next year. Jared Cook could be gone as well. I know they have Parham. I know they have Trey McKitty, I believe, who they drafted last season. So they've got some other tight ends, but Jared Cook's a red zone threat and Mike Williams is a red zone threat. And if those targets are gone and Josh Palmer does step into that role, that's going to be huge. And it's also worth noting Keenan Allen's going to be 30 next season. I think he's got a couple years left in the tank of elite wide receiver production. He was good in 2021, but he is starting to get older. He's starting to hit that wide receiver decline age. Typically around 29, 30 is where we start to see a little bit of a fall off from most guys. So we'll see how Keenan Allen ages. But Josh Palmer is someone who's very interesting. I want to go buy him wherever I can. I'm willing to throw out an early 3rd for Josh Palmer, early 3rd, mid 3rd, maybe even a couple of 3rd rounders to try to pick him up and just take the flyer, because in the 3rd round, that's what you're betting on anyway, is a flyer. And things are shaping up to have potential for Josh Palmer moving forward.
Love the hype on Palmer. One more name as far as wide receivers go, Terrace Marshall. Is he toast?
I don't think he's toast. I don't think he's total toast, but I'm not trying to buy him. I'll tell you that. If you have him, just hold on and hope that something goes his way. He was rough last season. There's a Denzel Mims every single year, it feels like, and I really hope this year it's not Terrace Marshall, but the quarterback situation was a disaster. Robbie Anderson had a terrible season, and Terrace Marshall was behind him on the depth chart. The efficiency from the quarterback spot was awful. So hold on hope for Marshall. He didn't really do much. He didn't flash very much. Had a couple preseason plays, but in the regular season, didn't play well and didn't get a ton of opportunity, battled injuries. So not someone I'm willing to buy, but if you have him, you just got to hold on. I definitely wouldn't cut him yet. Let's see what he has going into year 2. But things are looking rough for old Terrace.
Matt Rule is scaring me, bro. Matt Rule is scaring me. A lot of these decisions are just super questionable. I'm surprised he still has a job, and I would not be surprised at all if we just get the notification that he got fired, because I don't know what this offense is doing. I guess they're scapegoating Joe Brady. And I get that CMC's hurt and he's a core part of the offense, but come on, man. Have some more contingency than Chuba Hubbard as your number 2 option in the passing game. It took like 8 weeks for Robbie Anderson to have more than 50 yards in a game. Where is Terrace Marshall? I don't know. Maybe he's just not flashing in practice.
Poor DJ Moore too, man. It sucks.
I know. DJ Moore will somehow find a way to get his, but he really is looking like that next Allen Robinson, where it's just year after year of horrible quarterback play, but we know the talent's there. I'm just praying that they fire Matt Rule because I don't think that guy knows his way around an NFL field. But let's talk about 3 tight ends to wrap up today's show. Kyle Pitts, I don't know what more we can say. He's going in the first round in tight end premium startups on Keep Trade Cut, touted as the tight end 1 in Dynasty, 12th pick off the board. He's over Mark Andrews, over Kittle, over Kelsey, who's now the tight end 4. As the market starts to adjust after another season and guys getting older, are you in on that value of Kyle Pitts? He had over 1,000 yards. His comps based on his rookie production is incredible. And we saw him step in when Calvin Ridley was gone, when there was no run game, when Matt Ryan was tanking. Like, Pitts was maybe not putting fantasy points up on the board every week because he wasn't scoring the touchdowns, but he looked great on the field. He was getting deep downfield receptions, making yards after the catch. I'm excited for Pitts, but where do you stand on him?
Yeah, I'm in on Pitts because you look at these elite tight ends, they typically come out of nowhere. Travis Kelce took years to break out. George Kittle came out of nowhere as a waiver name halfway through a season several years back. And then you had Mark Andrews, a third-round pick, who emerged. Darren Waller, what a late breakout was he after he was bouncing in and out of the league due to, some of the rehab stuff he was going through. So these guys typically come out of nowhere. It's very rare that you get a glaring, obvious home run at the tight end spot because there's only a few elite tight ends. We've got Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, now Andrews, I'd say, are in that category. And it's the tight end, having one of those top guys can really set you apart. And Pitts is just an obvious guy who's going to be in that category, arguably already there. You look at his rookie season, you mentioned over 1,000 yards, highest a tight end has ever been drafted, has all the measurables, has all the ability. And the only problem with his rookie season was that he only scored 1 touchdown. And typically touchdowns are the least sticky stat. That one can go up and down. There's a lot of variance involved. So I expect him to score more than 1 touchdown moving forward. And the athleticism and the targets are still going to be there for Pitts. And he's a rookie tight end. We don't see rookies produce like this. So I'm all in on Pitts. I'm willing to take him at that current value. The only question for him moving forward is going to be the quarterback. But even then, I still think he's going to be the number 1 target for this team.
I'm probably out on that value just because I don't want to take a tight end that early. But in the leagues where people have him, he's unattainable. He's almost at that tier with like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, or like Jonathan Taylor, where it's just like the guy who has him isn't going to trade him for draft capital because they don't want to take the risk that they don't hit in the draft. And he's a guy that they can build around for years to come. The peripheral metrics were there for Kyle Pitts. Top 5 in yards per reception, yards per target, yards per route run. He was number 2 amongst all tight ends in average target distance, air yards, and air yard share, 3rd in deep targets. They were playing this kid at wide receiver. 33%, a third of his snaps were in the slot. So this is a playmaker that's getting the utilization in the offense that we wanted him to receive from Arthur Smith in Atlanta. I know Atlanta's in a rebuild situation. Matt Ryan could potentially get traded. At least that's my wishful thinking. Stuck with him on a few of my Superflex rosters. It could be more of the same for Pitts over the next couple of years, but that ceiling is insane. Insane. And he had 110 targets as a rookie. That's 5th at the position. So it's like, while there isn't a ton of room to go up necessarily, the offense getting better presents a ceiling. If you sprinkle some of that on top of the volume, oh man. Kyle Pitts might be going top 8 this time next year if he goes off.
Imagine if Travis Kelce was 22 years old, where would he be going? And now Pitts
Kyle Pitts just turned 21.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, now Pitts is not close to that production level yet, but imagine in 2022 he strings together a really good season as a top 3 tight end, and then he is 22 years old with close to that top 2, top 3 level production at the tight end spot. It's insane. So Kyle Pitts is a home run, but Steph, let's talk about Pat Freiermuth coming in at tight end 8 on Keep Trade Cut Dynasty rankings. With Big Ben, he found a way to get it done. Big Ben needed that check down guy. Juju Smith-Schuster missed a good part of the season, and Freiermuth did seem to benefit from that. Past Eric Ebron right off the bat. I thought Pat Freiermuth was going to be more of a draft and hold. Let's see if he starts to get involved throughout the season. If Eric Ebron's gone next year, maybe we see Pat Freiermuth get involved. He hopped right to it, man. 60 receptions, 497 yards, 7 touchdowns as a rookie. Was almost a tight end 1 in his rookie season on a bad Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Steph, how do you feel about Freiermuth as the tight end 8 right now in Dynasty, and how are you valuing him moving forward? Are you selling him high after that rookie year?
To me, he's in that range of young upside plays. And if you remember throughout the draft process, the Freiermuth comps, like, they're not anywhere as good as Kyle Pitts. But he has that Hunter Henry,
yeah,
that Dalton Schultz, for lack of a better comp. Just the guy that's not going to make your eyes bleed with yards after the catch, but a guy that can command targets. He can get open. I do think a little bit of his value was inflated because of the situation, but at tight end, there's really not that much. Like, he's in a range with Dawson Knox and Dalton Schultz. Maybe Noah Fant and Gesicki are in there too. He's ahead of the Cole Kmets of the world, the Hunter Henrys of the world, the Zach Ertzes of the world, the Tyler Higbees of the world. I think it's an accurate value for him. The youth is definitely exciting, but let me just say this, right? For the tight end position, this is not a guy that's going to win you a league. I don't think under any circumstance. Even if they bring in Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers into Pittsburgh, I don't know if that necessarily makes Pat Freiermuth. Yeah, he'll be a tight end 1, but he'll average, 11 fantasy points per game? It's not going to win you anything. And that's just the nature of his role in an offense and the player that he is. So you're hoping, right, in a scenario where they do get an Aaron Rodgers, that he becomes this red zone monster, right? That Robert Tonyan explosion that we had when Devontae Adams was out. That's the absolute ceiling for Freiermuth. But the youth is appealing, and he's probably a guy that you can just set it and forget him if you draft him over the next couple of years. Now, last name on this list, I want to throw him out there because it's a guy that I'm very excited about over the next couple of seasons to see where his value goes. And I've been sending out third-round picks for this guy in leagues where I need tight ends. It's Brevin Jordan. And I was on a rebuild roster where I ended up trading TJ Hawkinson throughout the year. Probably a mistake looking back on it. To you, Alex, unfortunately, gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. I was sitting there with pretty much nothing. It was like Austin Hooper as my tight end. Went and grabbed Brevin Jordan for dirt cheap. Was able to plug him in and then make a run later on in the season because he was producing and he was commanding targets. Now, the target competition was really Brandon Cooks and just a bunch of athletes. Don't have years of proven production, but are fun, exciting names. Chris Conley is a flyer type name. Davis Mills is actually getting guys the ball. He's dishing the rock. I know you're very high on Davis Mills. You're sending a lot of offers for him in Dynasty leagues, super flex leagues for the cheap. What do you think about Brevin Jordan? I'm very excited about his outlook.
Yeah, he's interesting. I'm with you. You know, he showed a little bit, not a ton in his rookie year, but on Houston, rookie tight end. What do you expect? So another one of those guys that people who probably took him with a late third, maybe even a 4th-round pick last year, they're like, didn't do anything his rookie season if they're just looking at the numbers and they didn't plug him into lineups. But if you're really reading between the lines and looking at when the production happened, he did really come on there at the end, and he is an athletic profile. So I'm with you. If you can throw out that late third, maybe even a 4th-round pick, who knows, for Brevin Jordan, I think he's a very interesting stash. And Davis Mills, you said it, he's getting people to rock. So maybe Brevin Jordan does work into an even bigger role, a full-time role in 2022.
What you'd love to see with a guy like Brevin Jordan is as the season went on, he just got better and better and better. His snap share went higher and higher and higher. Didn't even really start until week 8. Finally earned his reps on the field over the likes of, Jordan Akins. But 25% snap share in his first start, caught 3 of 4 targets for 41 yards and a touchdown. Had 2 other games with a touchdown. Had a couple double-digit fantasy point outings. And he's a pretty solid athlete, 6'3", 245 pounds. 5th-round draft capital isn't anything to write home about, but this guy was a monster producer at Miami in college, and that gives me faith that college production can carry over when we've seen flashes. And for a guy you're getting right now at the tight end 18, this is a dart throw and one that I'm certainly happy to take in Dynasty. But Alex, I think that's it for today's show. If you like what we do here on the channel, a like and a sub on YouTube, greatly appreciated. If you want to continue the conversation with us, play Dynasty against us. Maybe you think our takes are just totally wrong and you think you can beat us on these values. Join a league. Put your money where your mouth is in that Discord channel. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.